there are plenty of reasons for a scene to find itself sacrificed to the cutting room floor, or bin for those less messy editors. At one time as a lonely strip of film, but now likely relegated to the back of a hard drive. A scene might be unnecessarily expositional, slow, tonally inapt, not quite family-friendly, out-and-out bad, or simply redundant full stop. When the film or episode is already too long, certain moments may get the chop more easily than others. We didn't really need to see Hoshi learning the denobulin 4 xiphoid process in the Enterprise Season 2 episode Minefield, or Captain Picard spilling food all over himself in Insurrection, for example. Both segments were best left as curiosities for the collector. But the reverse is also true, invoking a sense of let's have a look at what you could have won as part of the special features. Certain deleted scenes really should have made it to air or to the cinema in the first place. We're left wondering why they were cut when they help explain key plot points. Other scenes have only seen the light of day decades after their celluloid severance, such as the material found in the Roddenberry vault. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie with Trek Culture, here with 10 Star Trek deleted scenes you must see. Number 10. Baby Spock do 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 do. First, not sorry for getting that song stuck in your head. Second, we've all seen One Birth of Spock, the Final Frontier Cybok guilt trip hallucination version. But another does exist. In a deleted scene that was originally meant to open 2009's Star Trek, we find ourselves in Shakar on Vulcan as the cries of a newborn baby echo across the desert. Designed to be somewhat cryptic for the novice, much like the Kirk birth scene, an unnamed human mother, Amanda of course, is joined by an unnamed Vulcan father, Sarek, who muses, "I had a thought that we might name the child after one of Vulcan's early society builders. His name was Spock." Whilst the scene was cut from the film, excerpts showing baby Spock were used in various trailers and TV spots. It was removed from the movie proper to avoid a certain heavy-handedness when it came to the rest of the young Spock and baby/young Kirk scenes. Given that Spock's birth year is stated as 2230 in the movie, although it was 2233 according to the animated series episode Yesteryear, and that Kirk's established birth year is 2233, the baby Spock scene on Vulcan in Star Trek must have taken place before the split in the timeline. The scene clashes a little with how Spock's birth is depicted in Star Trek V in a cave-like setting, but in theory we are in effect seeing both Prime and Kelvin baby Spock in Abrams' version. Number 9. Slow-mo FOMO. There is already a slow-motion moment in Star Trek Insurrection, of course. When the Baku and Enterprise crew members are hiking to take refuge in the mountains, Picard and Anish stop to take a quick tete-a-tete, which is really just an excuse for Anish to show off her Baku bullet time skills. Isn't the Briar Patch version of a hummingbird pretty, Jean-Luc? Is this going to be in the test later, Anish? The Picard-Anish scene was also originally scripted to include a passionate kiss between the pair. All of the necessary ultra slow-mo kit and caboodle was brought in and the kiss was filmed. Evidently, this bit of time dilation never made it past the edit. Presenting the deleted footage as part of the DVD extras, co-producer and unit director Peter Lauritsen explains, "We shot all these takes of them kissing and blinking their eyes in super slow motion, but it just didn't work when we cut it together. When you watch the scene, you can see exactly why. How to put this delicately? It just looks plain weird." Patrick Stewart is on record as having been disappointed that the kiss was cut, calling it a studio decision and somewhat inexplicable. This is an odd statement, in retrospect, as the reason should have been perfectly evident. The sequence simply wasn't good enough. One of the film's working titles was Star Trek Where Time Stands Still, and it was probably for the best that this fact wasn't made ever more literal. Number 8. Who on Earth is Becky? There are two fairly lengthy deleted scenes amongst those on the DVD extras for Star Trek Enterprise's Season 2. Taking place on Earth upon the ship's return after the Xindi attack in the episode The Expanse, it introduced a love interest or perhaps potential long-term partner for Captain Archer, and it wasn't Captain Hernandez who we first see in Season 4's Home. As the first scene opens, Archer is walking down a street in San Francisco. 22nd century cars whiz around, on wheels looking like a mix between a two-door smart car and a golf buggy. Before Archer arrives at his date at the Chinese restaurant, not the famous Madame Chang's, he also passes by a shop front of sorts that reads Long Life, presumably a fun nod to the what goes without saying. The second scene scene takes place inside the restaurant. After a muted discussion with Tommy, the maitre d', about the Xindi attack, Archer joins a certain Becky with a British accent. The pair have clearly known each other for a while, and after a bit of repartee and a kiss, Becky jokingly lets a fortune cookie decide whether Archer can come back to her apartment. The scene was cut as the episode was running 10 minutes long. It does feature in J.M. Dillard's novelization of The Expanse and the Xindi, in which we also learn that it was Becky's mother who gave Porthos to Archer from one of her prize litters of 4 Little Musketeers. Not canon, of course, but still a nice little detail. Scott Bakula also spoke favourably of the scene and the relationship, seeing a potential return for Becky before the sequence was dropped. Number 7. Parlez-vous français? Jean-Luc Picard, the very English Frenchman. In the 24th century of the Next Generation, French as a language was apparently no longer à la mode, and nationality was normally divested of its symbolic power. Nonetheless, Picard's mismatched manner of speaking remained an oddity for the longest time. Patrick Stewart did attempt some of the scenes from Encounter at Farpoint in a French accent, as he stated during a 2014 guest spot on the radio show Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. Sounding more like Inspector Clouseau, as he puts it, than a starship captain, he quickly abandoned that idea. The in-universe explanation for Jean-Luc's leanings for Shakespeare over Molière came in the Star Trek Picard Season 2 episode Watcher. It turned out that most of Picard's family had lived in England for generations, having fled Nazi-occupied France in World War II. For the sake of the French and Francophone viewer, things probably should have been left there. That far and no further. In a deleted scene from the first episode of Picard Season 1, the majority of which never made it to air but was released on Blu-ray, we are subjected to extended French dialogue on the grounds of Chateau Picard. Not content with the conversation he's getting from Number 1, in dog form, Picard in French castigates 2 of his vineyard workers who he has spied making mocking gestures about Laris. Stewart tries his level best, but his French is not good. His pronunciation is at times difficultly decipherable, and the offending worker probably answers "Oui, monsieur" out of sheer bewilderment rather than a sense of guilt. The interaction is a reminder of the Picard-Riker Minuet holodeck scene in the Next Generation episode 11001001. Picard and Minuet's French conversation in that moment had enough errors that it was noticeably altered when dubbed for the French version. Perhaps Picard should have got the hint from Q's incessant mispronunciation of Mon Capitaine. Still, that deleted scene is worth a watch. It was no doubt also cut because we see far too much of Number 1's photon torpedoes than is decent. Number 6. Jump Cut. Numerous scenes never made it to the final cut of Star Trek Generations. The one where LaForge is tortured by nanoprobes aboard the Bird of Prey was excised but later referenced. Several alternate takes were also filmed, such as Data getting high off yet more emotions and Kirk dying in silence. We even missed out on more Christmas in the Nexus. The scene which concerns us here was intended for the film's opening sequence. Interspersed with familiar shots of the floating champagne bottle, we see Scotty and Chekhov staring upward in an attempt to spot Kirk, who is on an orbital skydive over Earth. Kirk lands, although he is 35 meters from his precise target, according to Chekhov. The scene is rather humorous and blissfully nostalgic. We learn that Kirk has refused to step foot aboard a starship since retirement, a fact made ever more tragic given that we know what happens when he is finally persuaded to do so. According to director David Carson, the scene was cut as it made the prologue top-heavy, but it did appear as a bonus feature on the Generations Special Edition DVD, as well as in the novelization and a comic book adaptation of the film. The suit that Kirk wore for his skydive was then reused for B'Elanna's leap from a holographic spacecraft at exospheric altitudes in extreme risk. It was later sold at a Christie's auction for $8,400 as part of the 40 years of Star Trek The Collection. Number 5. Enology for androids. Before Picard resigned from Starfleet and escaped to the chateau, he clearly kept a few cases of his family wine aboard ship. In one delightful deleted scene from Star Trek Nemesis, this allows him to share a glass of the 2267 vintage with Data. 2267 may be a reference to the imposition of the Organian peace treaty between the Federation and the Klingons of that year, and the subsequent co-founding of the Nimbus 3 colony by the Federation, the Romulans, and the Klingons. At first named the Planet of Galactic Peace, Nimbus 3 turned into a notorious failure. Given that the deleted scene takes place close to the start of Nemesis, just after the Troy-Riker wedding, the wine's vintage could have been a clue, therefore, that peace between Shinzon/the Remans, the Romulans, and the Federation was doomed to failure. This is also the year that Khan was discovered aboard the SS Botany Bay, so there may be a link there with genetically poorly engineered despots. The rest of the scene is avowedly prophetic. As Patrick Stewart himself states in a piece to camera for the Nemesis DVD extras, the moment between Picard and Data is one that will resonate through the movie and become very potent in the last 10 or 15 minutes. As the pair sip on the wine, the conversation turns to the passage of time, transitions for the crew, the past and the future, mortality, duty, and family. Picard then rather noddingly comments, "Oh, Data, you never know what's over the horizon." Truer words were never spoken. It is this same Chateau Picard vintage that is served as a toast to Data after his death at the end of the film, making the deleted scene ever more poignant. To absent friends, to family. 2 empty bottles of Chateau Picard from that memorial scene were auctioned by Christie's as part of the 40 years of Star Trek The Collection. They sold for a whopping $6,600. Number 4. Vaulting Ambitions. Star Trek The Original Series The Roddenberry Vault was released on Blu-ray in 2016, just in time for the 50th anniversary. Whilst the set does include 12 remastered episodes from the first and second seasons with new audio commentaries, it is the special feature documentaries inside the Roddenberry Vault that are the must-see. During production, Gene Roddenberry was seemingly prolific in holding on to the original series dailies, raw, unedited films shot on any particular day. Some of these, as well as first drafts of various scripts, were sold by Roddenberry under his and later Majel Barrett's company, Lincoln Enterprises. Large quantities of salvaged film, which had never before been released to the general public, were also stored in a back room at the company. Years later, in 2007, Eugene Roddenberry, in a sudden realization of the treasure trove he was sitting on, decided to open the vault. The Herculean task of sorting through the canisters of footage was then given to Michael and Denise Okuda. Thanks to their efforts, we can all now enjoy a plethora of previously unseen original series deleted scenes, alternate and extended takes, omitted dialogue, outtakes, behind-the-scenes glimpses, and even temporary and unused visual effects shots. Admittedly, some of the material on the Blu-ray does stand out over the more run-of-the-mill rest. Of particular note are cutscenes from The City on the Edge of Forever that expand upon the burgeoning relationship between Kirk and Edith Keeler. Others include deleted scenes of Khan from Space Seed, partial audio found from Who Mourns for Adonis, which confirms that Carolyn was originally scripted to be pregnant with Apollo's baby by the end of the episode, and an alternate take of Kirk's rousing "Risk is our business" speech from Return to Tomorrow. Number 3. Where My Heart Is, the Antares alternate. Nichelle Nichols began her career as a singer and dancer, having been discovered in the 1940s by none other than Duke Ellington. Nichols then toured with the jazz icon. As Uhura, Nichols regaled us with song in episodes of the original series such as Charlie X, Damn You Charlie for Cutting Her Off, and The Changeling, to the stupefaction of the ruthless mechanical beastie Nomad. Let's not also forget her melodious humming on the amusement park planet in the animated series episode Once Upon a Planet. Moreover, when Nichols was planning to leave the original series after season 1, it was to return to musical theatre. The most noteworthy of Uhura/Nichols' vocal performances comes during the episode The Conscience of the King. Whilst playing the Vulcan lute as accompaniment, Uhura sings Beyond Antares over the ship's intercom to a lonely Kevin Riley. The song was written for the episode with music by Wilbur Hatch and lyrics by Gene L. Kuhn. One of the absolute highlights of the footage found and released in the Roddenberry Vault is an alternate take of the Beyond Antares scene. The camera stays with Nichols in this version as she gives her masterclass performance, including an extra verse of the song. The full song had previously been released in 2012 on La La Land Records' Star Trek The Original Series soundtrack collection, but only the audio. In another deleted scene from the season 3 episode Elan of Troyes, shown in the swept-up snippets from the cutting room floor featurette of the Roddenberry Vault, Uhura asked Spock to teach her to play the Vulcan lute. This is a strange request given that she seemed to be rather adept at the instrument barely 2 years earlier. Number 2. The Good Ship Optics. This entry is a bit unorthodox as it will focus not on any deleted scenes per se, but on unused visual effects. Nonetheless, these shots are an absolute must-see for any Star Trek fan worth their salt. In one documentary featurette of the Roddenberry Vault Blu-ray, Strange New Worlds Visualizing the Fantastic, we are utterly spoilt with leftover shots of the miniature filming model of the original Enterprise, including camera flybys, the technique which created the illusion that the ship was in forward motion through space. In another sublime example, the camera glides in towards the bridge as the Enterprise is rotated from underneath by a studio operator. We see excerpts of temporary visual effects from the episode Spectre of the Gun, isolated visual effects elements of the Galactic Barrier, other blue screen views of the space station K7, behind-the-scenes transporter sequences, views of the Enterprise shuttle bay, and blue screen shots of the Galileo. The featurette also also allows us an insight into the visual effects process on the original series. For example, to produce a typical shot, such as the Enterprise flying through space or orbiting a planet, the blue screen footage of the ship was combined with shots of a starfield or artwork of a planet in an optical printer. This gigantic device, which was essentially part projector, part camera, allowed the different elements to be re-filmed to form a new composite shot. The revolutionary machine was the brainchild of Linwood Dunn, the father of optical printing, who worked directly on the visual effects for Star Trek. Creativity was not in short supply on the original series. Feats of analog ingenuity, as the original series visual effects artist Richard Edlund puts it, even included the use of cornflakes on strings as asteroids, as seen in Mudd's Women. For another effect, pans of mercury were hit with a hammer to create different patterns of reflected light, used notably for the introduction of the Metrons over the view screen in the episode Arena. These are just two examples. Their innovativeness was boundless. The filming model of the Enterprise, largely the work of Matt Jeffries, has been in the care of the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. since 1974. Number 1. Insurrection my ass. It seems that metaphasic radiation had yet another effect on Captain Picard. In the midst of all the sedition, bird-watching, a little bit of mamboing, and talk sensor realigning, he also developed a bit of a potty mouth. In a deleted scene, which was released on the Star Trek Insurrection Special Collector's Edition DVD, we see what amounts to extended alternate dialogue between Picard, Worf, and Galnar. This time, just before we learn that the launch sequence has been resumed aboard the Collector, Riker hails Picard from the Enterprise. We get the gloriously sarcastic line that was used later in the final cut of the film after Picard's last-second rescue. The Council ordered a halt to the Baku relocation while they conduct a top-level review. In the alternate scene, Picard replies to Riker with clear fury in his voice directed at Starfleet and the Federation, "Top-level review my ass. There will be no cover-up." As fun as Picard's outburst is, the top-level review line arguably works better when it's given by Riker after the Collector has been destroyed. Placed there in the film, it adds a layer of irony and subtle wit that was not possible beforehand. The rest of the deleted scene is also overly expositional. In it, Picard and co prepare to disable the Collector rather than activate its self-destruct, the discussion of which becomes rapidly convoluted. More to the point, the entire scene could never have made it to theatres. It only works with regards to the original scripted ending, in which Ruafo escapes the Collector and dies from rapid de-aging in the metaphasic rings. Speaking in the DVD extras, co-producer / unit director Peter Lauritsen states that this cut of the film was rejected by Paramount in post-production because it did not have enough bang. If in doubt, explosions. And that concludes our list. If you think we missed any, then please let us know in the comments below. And while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell so you never miss a Trek Culture video ever again. Also, head over to Twitter and Instagram to follow us there, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with Trek Culture. I hope you have a wonderful day, and remember to boldly go where no one has gone before.